Thank you so much.
You are an official. I should be very specific. Executive Director at the Center for Adequate Living Rights. Food security and the need to have access to food is a basic human right. Within the auspices of your work, how are you encountering this challenge when you get to understand that the rights you're fighting for are actually not being observed deliberately by the stakeholders across board? Before we came on air, I was posing a question to you and asking who and where is the ball being dropped when it comes to ensuring that we have access to food consistently.
And thank you so much, Chris. And I like it when you said deliberate, because it is deliberate.
Yeah, it is.
When someone becomes reckless or when someone is too careless, we end up, we make a conclusion that whatever you're doing is deliberate.
It's deliberate, yeah.
And in criminal law, you are culpable. So when it comes to food, where do I start from? Let me first define, when we talk about food, some people do not understand us, and some people are wondering, you're a lawyer, what do you do with this thing? Is there anything legal when it comes to food?
There is everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, all viewers, food is a human right. It's a fundamental human right.
That's right.
Just to relate it to your ordinary life, when we wake up, the first thing is food. Everyone wants to have a meal in the morning, mid-morning. Some people do brunch, others lunch, every time. So when we are talking about the right to adequate food, it's that situation where everyone, whether woman, child or man, alone or in a community, can be able to access adequate food. And when we say adequate, we do not only talk about the quantity, we are also talking about the quality of food at all times, or means of accessing the food. The access could be physical or it could be monetary, because not everyone has a garden and not everyone wants to dig, by the way. Other people are just, let me work, I'll go to the market, I'll go to the supermarket, I'll go to a restaurant, which is very okay, so long as they have the means to access that food anytime they need, and the food must be able to, to measure up their nutritional needs, because our bodies operate on those nutritional requirements.
That's right.
So that's where we are starting from. So a situation that requires you to have access food consistently or permanently, and you see it has dimensions. The food that I eat is not the food that is required of a baby. So we need to be very careful here. Where do we start from? You see, the human nature works from the womb. Before a woman conceives, before a woman becomes pregnant, there is some food she needs to eat for the 6 months before she conceives. Unfortunately...
Wait a minute.
Yes. Yes.
Did I hear that right? I'm trying to process.
Before a woman conceives, she must be careful, and she selects food that she eats 6 months before conceiving. Unfortunately, people just conceive, people just eat.
That is a hard paper.
Seriously speaking, and you
that means a lot more planning has to go into the making of children.
Exactly.
It must be a deliberate
effort, action.
That we want a child. And if it is January, let's make sure May the conception occurs.
Yes, we start in January, prepare ourselves, maybe in May or June. That is when we are going to conceive. Don't just wake up and make babies. You have a problem. What are you eating? So you want someone's daughter to be pregnant, but she's feeding on posho and all those stuff that you are putting in your house.
Oh my God.
No.
Wait
that
a minute.
is not feeding.
Are you just discrediting posho?
Well, that is a food.
Yet it completely makes up the bulk of the food that people eat, especially during teenage years at school.
Yeah, posho per se wouldn't be, maybe would be food, but the current posho we have, particularly in Uganda, is not food. Whoever is eating the posho that is on the market in Uganda, you are just lying to yourself. You are killing yourself, you are killing your children.
Where do you get the, no, I won't say guts, but what is the basis of that conclusion?
Let me tell you, Chris, if we had a government that cares about its people, and I'm not saying they don't care, but you listen to my statement.
You just said if we had a government that cares.
Today, they would have stopped all the maize milling people in Uganda and the industries. Today.
Tell us why.
We have a report last year from Uganda National Bureau of Standards. You see, I love that bureau because it is a government agency, but they tell you the fact. You understand? And
then you deal with
from
it.
Their technical side, they'll tell you this is it. Now, how you deal with it, it is your part, but they tell you. If you have a country and 78% of the millers in Uganda are not food grade, would you eat that posho? We are eating metal. We are eating aflatoxins. People are weak. By the way, let me speak to you Ugandans. You find the Ugandan early morning is trying to stretch, like they have no energy. They are weak, they are sick, they can't reason. It is the food. What did you eat yesterday? You put almost half of a kilogram of that thing called posho. You see, they go for, is it number one? That white stuff. That's not food. Because if it is not safe, it is not food. If that thing you are eating, and by the way, children are going back to school. This one is an imminent danger. If you take your children to these schools, the schools do not have the capacity, and those who have the capacity, they don't care about how your children are supposed to be growing properly. So they feed them on portion. Imagine 90 days when someone is only eating one thing. What kind of body is that? Do you know the kind of a complex system a human being operates just in their lifetime?
Would I be very harsh if I said that the authorities, right from independence, that made a tradition for schools to consume posho and beans, have killed us?
No, you see, from independence, I wasn't here, but we read history.
Of course.
For me, I spoke to my father, and my father told me that during their time, everything was good. They used to even take milk at school. They used to eat, you know, eggs, and then they had like a community system. Those Tataroris, each school almost had. If you go to those old schools, and then in the community there was a system of rumonde, sweet potatoes, matoke in a school. Where we got a problem is we went into capitalism and we don't understand it. For us here in Uganda, we think that you leave the private sector, you leave them. But these people do not understand that when you invest, it creates a legal obligation on you not to harm the rights of others. You understand? And when you come in, because they have money, they have a voice, they have influence, they have power, they can even put you underground. You understand? So there is a disconnect between the private sector understanding that although they are private in their way of doing business, but there are rights that they must respect too.
Allow me contextualize this very dramatic condition that we find ourselves in. That something is closely related to the history of food consumption in the country. Of late, I've heard nutritionists and doctors speak about the need to completely disengage from intake of sugar in any form.
Yes.
And you wonder, doctors have been around for a long time, even Ugandan doctors, very qualified. And all this while, they know that sugar does precipitate the incidence of cancer in the human body. But somehow, our children, and we inclusive, have consumed sugar right from childhood in quantities that are untold. Why choose at this point in time to tell us that the best possible thing to do is to not take any sugar at all, while you have presided over a way of life that has sugar right from breakfast, lunch, dinner? I'm not even trying to, but I'm failing to understand who is saying the truth. Are you being an activist? Or can you just bring this into context? Because at the end of the day, the crisis is bigger than we actually put it.
We do not even have enough time to cover this subject because it is very wide.
Pick on what we can take.
What you are talking about, sugar, it is a killer product. Let me give it that name. Sugar is a killer product. Okay, yes. When these are children, they still have a lot of time. They can run around. Of course, they can burn. When you speak to nutritionists, they desist from don't eat, don't.
They don't want to be alarmist.
Yes, but who controls who moderates it? Because in Uganda we don't have, for example, warning labeling. When you go to the supermarket or everywhere to buy something, there is too much that is hidden. The government doesn't care. If at least they would warn us that this is excess sugar, this is excess salt, this is excess fat, that would be, because you cannot, sugar is part of the human race, because we need sugar. Sometimes we get it from even the food.
That's right.
So, but people are taking it in excess. And two, you realize that some of the sugar products we have on the market is not sugar. In fact, they are chemicals. The other time, if you went to the open market, there are different brands. They will tell you, don't give me this, give me this, don't give me this. What makes that difference is the problem. If you put sugar in just water and then you stir, you'll see that there are many particles down. What is that? So maybe this is why you are saying don't take sugar at all.
Are those particles perhaps part of what the unavoidable residue, especially when it comes to the fact that sugar goes through metals, go through some sections? Could that be, you're trying to suggest it's a deliberate attempt to include those particles in there? Is it?
It may not be deliberate, but someone has not done their duty to protect other people. Not even due diligence. They don't go that extra mile. Like let me give you an example. If you are eating kabalagala in Uganda, I need to help you. These are the things that we don't see.
Reminds me of the lady in Tinda who used to sell kabalagala, and we never used to miss. And here I am.
Have you seen how cassava is dried in Uganda?
I see it.
Even on the roadside. Yeah. You see that it develops those molds and everything. It is even brownish. And where do you think this ordinary woman who makes kabalagala buys the cassava flour? That cassava flour is contaminated, whether you like it or not. Two, do you think that woman has the capacity to buy a frying pan that is food grade? She bought one from maybe Chisenyi here. These are building materials. Someone got a building material, they molded it into a frying pan. It is what she's using to make your pancakes. Secondly, does she have the capacity to buy olive oil, which is recommended for such heat for your kabalagala? Or she's just using any oil that is on the market? Ugandans, stop being careless about your lives. And some of us are coming out to help ourselves, including me. When I'm speaking to you, I'm also speaking to myself. Because I've been growing in this system, a system that does not care, we think it is okay. Let me tell you, Chris, we have a president who is very wise, intelligent, and he makes his statements. If you follow them, you understand, you put the government aside and then follow what he says. Do you know that that guy moves with his cup? One time he went to Europe.
We've seen him.
The president himself. You see, for me, I pick out my messages clearly. That guy moves with his cup. And in that cup, he said, you will not find this other refined food. It is millet. Millet. Why is he taking that millet? Why are some Ugandans, why do we feel superhuman that we shouldn't feed on our local native food? Why do you want to eat wheat from Ukraine?
There is a tendency to assume that that is local and perhaps, interestingly, not nutritious. No. Someone is just lying to people. And this is misinformation that the food industry is using. Maybe we are talking about food insecurity. Why we have food insecurity partly is because of the food industry, the conventional agriculture. People have been misled and lied to. You cannot produce without synthetic chemicals. You cannot produce without this. It is a lie. Where has our food gone? Do you know that we are losing, biodiversity now? The kind of, yams that we had, tubers, it's all going to get extinct. The millet is getting extinct. The beans that we had are getting extinct. So, would I be wrong to state on national television that the government is complicit in that?
You see, you need to be... You need to be very careful with some of the statements.
No, at the end of the day,
you do not...
Given what you have stated,
yes,
we know the trajectory of the food system, right from the farm to the markets, to the supermarkets, and to the table. The people who are buying, who are responsible for the value chain, most of them are within government. So I do not think there should be any fear in stating that the state is complicit.
The state is not only complicit, but I think they are sleeping and they don't care.
No, all right, say it the way you want to say it.
Okay, this is it, Chris. You see, I come from a legal background. We have a constitution in this country.
We don't want to defame or find ourselves in...
Yeah, you see, I am an executive director of an organization, and I have a permit from that government that allows me to do this work. And they gave me that permit and they said, okay, Kabanda, you do that. Okay. It is only in this country, and I want to speak to the powers that be. We do not have a national food authority. Why? Why shouldn't we have a national food authority? You asked me about East Africa. Under Article 10, each partner state in East Africa must establish strategic food reserves. They even call them strategic. It is only Uganda that does not have. Why? Who is playing the game? And in whose favor? You've heard that our maize has been even rejected in South Sudan, the youngest nation in the world, telling a 60-year-old nation that you do not have proper regulation for your food. Take back your maize. Are we not ashamed? Our people, are we okay? We do not have, as a country, you see, you talked about food security. Much of the food is lost. Because let me demonstrate to you. I'm a farmer and I have 1 acre. If I practice good agricultural practices and I planted maize, I can produce over 40 bags. Who is this individual farmer in Uganda that has capacity to store 40 bags of maize in their house? You know how our homes are. This is the sitting room, this is the bedroom. So they leave the maize outside, and it gets aflatoxins.
The latest data from the Economic Policy Research Center at Makerere University says we have only 8 food reservoirs in the country, and they're in the hands of the private sector. These are storing up to 32,000 metric tons of food, which is way below the production capacity. Apparently, that is slightly above 0.2% of our production capacity. So when you say where is the food being stored, that is of course a very pertinent question. But when it comes to strategic silos being established, we've had stories and statements from leaders and including ministers about the need to revamp, and those projects are underway. Do you have an idea of where those projects are, given your good offices as the Center for Adequate Living Rights?
We have followed up this issue. I even went to court, and the then Honorable Sempija made a statement at floor of Parliament that they are helping in the video.
At the time he was Minister for Agriculture.
He was Minister for Agriculture. And for me, I told the court that be very careful with those political statements. Don't base on them to give us a judgment. And the judge couldn't listen. They had promised that by now, in fact last year 2023, each household in Uganda will be having, they called them, there is that scientific term for sacks.
Silos.
Those sacks that protect the produce.
Yeah.
There is a
each household would have.
Yes, each household.
Right.
I told the judge that for me, this one, and it is not the constitutional obligation. The constitutional obligation is talking about national food reserves. So you cannot tell me that if you give me a sack in my own house, that is a national food reserve that you are creating. And up to today, they have never given us this. Why? Why? We are crying to them. Many Ugandans are dying of hunger and also of disease that is coming out of aflatoxins. People drop and they die. Sometimes we don't even properly diagnose what has killed them. But it is food. Food is killing people. So we want to speak to the powers that be, that we all care about. And by the way, let me tell you, Chris, do you know that 60% of school-going children spend the entire day at school hungry? 60%. This is data from government statistics. Uganda Bureau of Statistics, National Planning Authority, very clearly telling you that Ugandan children, you see, I was telling you about a woman preparing to give birth, and what the child is in the stomach after giving birth, what do you feed on her, you understand? And now we have these teenagers, we have the babies, we have the adolescents, we have the teenagers in the school system, spending almost 20 years in that system that is not feeding them. What kind of generation are we talking about? Will we ever develop, by the way? When you walk through the suburbs of Kampala and the nearby, and even in the villages, the evidence is very clear that we have a population that has not been fed.
Well,
maybe not at all.
That's interesting.
Let me also leave this point, because I talked about human development. For you men who are listening to me, listen very carefully. If you are going to have babies, serious babies that will not disturb you, make sure that you eat well. Because the eating contributes on what you produce. I will not demonstrate it further. This is why many of the kids you are producing are weaklings. People are always in the hospitals. You are feeding on chikomando. Who told you that your body must be feeding on wheat, refined wheat, from morning to evening, day one, day in, day out?
All right. You've looked into the eyes of the Ugandan and told them exactly what the issue is. you're right now speaking from a point of knowledge,
yes,
especially when it comes to food. The other day, I and my colleague were talking about what I refer to as a food calendar, but actually it's technically a meal plan that can be created.
Yes.
I need you to look in the eyes of the Ugandan and tell us what is the ideal meal plan that you should adopt. Of course, in the knowledge that some of the products on the market may be adulterated with chemicals, but take that precaution and ensure that what you choose on the ramps of the supermarket are exactly what is quality. If you succeed at that point, what should the meal plan be in order to ensure, especially for the men, that you, as you said, will produce the best of kids, and for the women, they conceive, and by the time they conceive, they are prepared and the body is ready to give us the best version of a human being.
Chris, our bodies are different. It cannot be a one-size-fits-all, but we have cross-cutting dimensions.
That's why you should pay attention.
Make sure that you don't just eat to fill up the stomach. Let me start with this. The kitchen at your home must be everyone's responsibility. Let us now stop thinking that it is only the responsibility of women. As men, we need to be responsible
for what happens
in there and what is in there. That is number one. The number two, it is important that you eat wonderful, great breakfast. Eat it, but make sure that you see, I'm practicing things that I know now that are giving me good health. That things that I used not to do before. I take 8 hours interval before I eat.
8 hours in between meals?
Yes, that is the minimum. But sometimes I go to 16 or 14.
All right. That plays well into the fundamental aspect of fasting, to allow for the body to regenerate.
To allow the body, and then you realize that if you do that, the body is strong, the body, you are alert, but people do not believe it, because when you start eating, the body is conditioned to eat. So I want to speak to you, before I even tell you eat this or that, how you eat is very important. Make sure that you don't eat food at night.
And what
especially beyond 8 p.m.
After 8 p.m.?
Yes, kindly don't fill up. Kindly don't put, because our food, if you ate like a Ugandan, the food is the food is heavy. I'm very sorry, but you find someone eating a full sania at night, and what kind of competition is that? And what kind of trophy are you? Someone, it is past 10, but someone is eating Rusania. That is wrong. Then secondly, you know, if you stopped eating maybe at 7, some people can't stop. Some of us stop at 5 p.m. or even 4, and then you eat the following day. It could be 8 or 9, but you can stretch to 10. It is okay. Your body you'll be okay. Then when you decide to eat, make sure you have fruits. You understand? You have vegetables. That should be like 90% of your plate. If you can't, okay, help me do 50%. You understand? Then these other either starchy vegetables or carbohydrates and what should be 40, 30. And please go and do a blood sugar test. Many people are pre-diabetic and they don't know. And that one is causing many issues. Someone cannot see well, others are blind, others are sick. It is pre-diabetic condition, but you don't know.
How much does that cost?
It is very cheap.
The average Ugandan hearing you say we need to go for a blood and sugar test will basically juxtapose the cost and the survival. I want to sue the government. Yes, I'm going to sue the government because I want the government of Uganda to provide testing services at every health center, 3 testing blood.
Yes, just sugar. blood sugar. Because if you get to know your blood sugar, you become cautious. How you eat, how you work out yourself.
All right.
And it is cheap in many health centers, 3,000 or 4,000. Anyway, that is not cheap to many people. But if you are, if you want your life, please go there and do it. It will help you how you eat.
Council Kabanda, what is the strategically sustainable agenda that should be pursued right now at all levels, individual, community, as well as government?
Let me start with the corporate people, because you corporate people are a light to many people. I have many people who are looking at me and they follow my path. So it has to start with us. Kindly, you have money, I know. Invest in having home gardens. Eat from your garden.
Home gardens in apartments?
Well,
because that is another problem. Okay. Most of the corporate people are not living in their own houses.
Make sure
they are renting apartments.
Make sure that where you buy food, you insist that the food should not be sprayed. Let me not even talk about organic, because organic is a technical term which means other things, too many things.
Yeah.
But when you go to buy the food in Nakasero, in these main markets in Kampala, insist that the food should not be sprayed. Don't pick tomatoes that have those whitish substance called mancozeb. You are causing cancer to your children. That's where we start from. Then those who can afford to have a backyard garden, do it yourselves. I have hens that give me eggs. I have told you, Chris, before, I can't come to your home and I eat eggs, because I know what the poultry business in Uganda does to thrive. It is on chemicals. You're
a good visitor. I won't struggle a lot what to feed you.
Then for the districts, because now for the people who live in the villages, we are now promoting agroecology. Agroecology, meaning that let us, and by the way, it is protected under Section 4 of the NEMA Act.
Very quickly.
Yes, nature rights.
Yeah.
Don't kill nature. Then for the local governments, I think you also need to be sued, but how many people am I going to sue anyway? Because it is your responsibility to make sure that the environment integrity is not, compromised. And then with the Mr. Government, you know what to do. You are now working on a food policy. Let me hope that all these issues that we are talking about are in the policy. And lastly, kindly give us a food authority. We need it.
All right. David Kabanda, Executive Director at the Center for Adequate Living Rights. Many thanks for
Center for Food
and Adequate Living Rights.
Yeah.
Thanks for that correction, and of course many thanks for the submission, as well as offering us very, very pertinent insight into how we can feed. And of course that drives into the greater goal and the strategic plan of ensuring that food security is achieved on the part of every Ugandan. The President, while speaking at the just concluded Non-Aligned Movement Summit, spoke of the fact that Uganda has enough and sufficient food. Whether the value chain is sufficient in ensuring that quality is met remains to be seen. But that's a message that we shall continue to amplify here on Morning at NTV. Well, that's it for this particular discussion, but do stay with us. Take note. Doing social business in Africa is the conversation that's coming up next. You want to watch.